In 1992, a 6-year-old boy disappeared from the streets of Guaratuba, Brazil. What followed was one of the most controversial criminal cases in South American history, involving accusations of satanic ritual, police corruption, and a justice system that would divide an entire nation. This is the story of Evandro Ramos Caetano and the 7 people who may have paid the ultimate price for a crime they didn't commit. Guaratuba is a small coastal town in southern Brazil, known for its pristine beaches and quiet lifestyle. In the early 1990s, it was home to about 25,000 people, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone and serious crime was virtually unheard of. But Brazil in 1992 was a nation in transition. The country had recently emerged from military dictatorship, democracy was still fragile, and social tensions ran high. It was also a time when satanic panic, the widespread fear of occult practices, was sweeping across Latin America, imported from similar hysteria in the United States. Into this volatile mix stepped 6-year-old Evandro Ramos Caetano. Evandro was the youngest of 4 children, living with his family in a modest neighborhood. He was described by everyone who knew him as a happy, energetic child who loved to play soccer and explore his neighborhood. On April 6, 1992, he left his house to buy candy at a local store. He never returned home. The last confirmed sighting of Evandro was at 2:30 p.m., just blocks from his home. When he didn't return by evening, his family began to panic. His mother, Crimea, immediately contacted the police. What happened next would haunt the investigation from the very beginning. The initial police response was, by all accounts, inadequate. Officers suggested the boy had probably just wandered off and would return on his own. Precious hours were lost while the family desperately searched the neighborhood themselves. It wasn't until the following day that a proper search began. Police, firefighters, and hundreds of volunteers combed through Guaratuba and the surrounding areas. They found nothing. Days turned into weeks. The case began receiving national attention. Evandro's photo appeared on television screens across Brazil, and the reward for information grew to substantial amounts. But despite the publicity, there were no credible leads. Then, 43 days after Evandro's disappearance, everything changed. On May 19, 1992, a man walking through a remote forested area outside Guaratuba made a horrifying discovery. Partially buried under leaves and debris, he found the decomposed remains of a small child. The body was so badly decomposed that immediate identification was impossible. However, clothing fragments and the size of the remains suggested it could be Evandro. But what shocked investigators wasn't just the discovery of the body. It was the condition in which it was found. According to the initial forensic reports, the child appeared to have been mutilated. The medical examiner reported evidence of what appeared to be ritualistic injuries, missing organs, precise cuts that suggested the use of sharp instruments. The scene had all the hallmarks of what investigators believed to be a satanic ritual sacrifice. The news exploded across Brazilian media. Headlines screamed about satanic cults and ritual murder. The satanic panic that had been simmering beneath the surface of Brazilian society suddenly erupted into full hysteria. But was this really evidence of occult activity, or something far more sinister? Leading the investigation was Detective Diogenes Caetano Costa, ironically sharing a surname with the victim, though they were not related. Costa was determined to solve the case quickly, and under intense public pressure, he began pursuing the satanic ritual angle aggressively. Within weeks, Costa had identified his primary suspects, 7 local residents who he claimed were part of a satanic cult. The group included Osvaldo Marcinero, known locally as a folk healer and practitioner of Umbanda, a Brazilian spiritual religion often misunderstood and stigmatized. The other suspects were Celina Abage, Beatriz Abage, Davidos Santos Soares, Leide das Neves Ferreira, Sonia Regina Abade, and Tomás Agostinho Abage. They ranged in age from their 20s to their 60s, and most had no prior criminal history. What evidence did Detective Costa have against these 7 people? According to the police, it came from an unexpected source. Under interrogation, several of the suspects began to confess. They admitted to kidnapping little Evandro. They described in graphic detail how they had performed a satanic ritual, how they had tortured and killed the child, and how they had disposed of his body. The confessions were detailed, consistent, and absolutely horrifying. There was just one problem. According to critics of the investigation, every single confession had been obtained through torture. What the public didn't know at the time was what was happening behind closed doors at the Guaratuba police station. According to later testimony from the suspects themselves, as well as some police officers who came forward years later, the interrogations involved systematic physical and psychological torture. Electric shocks, beatings, sleep deprivation, threats against family members. The suspects claim they confessed to crimes they didn't commit simply to make the torture stop. But in 1992, with the media frenzy at its peak and public demanding justice for little Evandro, these allegations were largely ignored. The 7 suspects were charged with kidnapping, torture, and ritual murder. The case seemed closed. Justice, it appeared, had been served. But some people weren't convinced. As the case moved through the Brazilian legal system, cracks began to appear in the prosecution's narrative. Defense lawyers, investigative journalists, and human rights activists started asking uncomfortable questions. First, the forensic evidence. Independent experts who reviewed the medical examiner's reports found significant inconsistencies. The ritual mutilations that had seemed so convincing initially could easily be explained by natural decomposition and animal activity in the forest. Second, the timeline. Several of the suspects had alibis for the time of Evandro's disappearance that had never been properly investigated by police. Third, the confessions themselves. Experts in coercive interrogation pointed out that the suspects' statements contained factual errors about the crime scene and method of death that the real perpetrators would have known. Perhaps most damning of all, in 2009, 17 years after Evandro's death, new forensic technology allowed for DNA testing of evidence from the crime scene. The results showed no genetic material from any of the 7 convicted suspects. But the most shocking revelation was yet to come. In 2012, exactly 20 years after Evandro's disappearance, investigative journalist Roberto Puglia published a bombshell investigation that changed everything the public thought they knew about the case. According to Puglia's research, based on previously classified police documents and new witness testimony, Evandro may not have been the victim of a satanic cult at all. Instead, Puglia argued that the boy had likely been killed by a local drug dealer who mistakenly believed Evandro had witnessed a drug-related murder. The satanic ritual theory, according to this investigation, was essentially fabricated by police to cover up their failure to properly investigate the drug connection. Why would police create such an elaborate false narrative? Puglia suggested several motives: incompetence, corruption, and the pressure to solve a high-profile case quickly. The Satanic angle provided a sensational story that satisfied public demand for justice while protecting the real criminals. But perhaps, most tragically, this alternative theory came too late for some of the convicted suspects. By 2012, 3 of the 7 convicted individuals had died: Osvaldo Marcineiro, Davido Santos Soares, and Leide das Neves Ferreira. They died still branded as child killers and satanic cultists. They never lived to see their potential vindication. Today, the Evandro case remains one of Brazil's most controversial criminal justice failures. In 2017, Brazil's Supreme Court ordered a complete review of the convictions. New evidence continues to emerge that supports the theory that the 7 suspects were innocent. For the families involved, the trauma continues. Evandro's mother, Crimea, has maintained her belief in the original convictions, though she has expressed doubts about the police methods used. The families of the convicted suspects continue their fight for posthumous exoneration. The case has become a symbol of everything wrong with Brazil's criminal justice system during its democratic transition: police brutality, media sensationalism, and the dangerous power of moral panic to override due process. It has also highlighted the vulnerability of religious minorities in Brazil. The persecution of Umbanda practitioners in this case reflected broader prejudices against Afro-Brazilian religious traditions. Legal experts now widely consider the Evandro case to be one of the worst miscarriages of justice in modern Brazilian history, comparable to famous wrongful conviction cases in other countries. So what really happened to 6-year-old Evandro Ramos Caetano on that April day in 1992? The truth is, we may never know for certain. The real perpetrator was likely never caught, and crucial evidence was lost or compromised decades ago. What we do know is that 7 people were probably wrongfully convicted of one of the most heinous crimes imaginable. 3 of them died as pariahs, branded as child killers and devil worshippers. The Evandro case serves as a stark reminder of how fear, prejudice, and the pressure for quick justice can lead even democratic societies down very dark paths. Today, Guaratuba has returned to its quiet, peaceful existence, but the scars of 1992 remain. In a small cemetery outside town, a simple gravestone marks the resting place of little Evandro Ramos Caetano, a child whose death shook a nation and exposed the fragility of justice itself. The fight for justice in the Evandro case continues today. If you found this story compelling, please like and subscribe for more deep dives into Brazil's most mysterious cases. What do you think happened to Evandro? Was this a case of satanic panic, police corruption, or something else entirely? Let me know in the comments below. Next week, we'll be exploring another Brazilian mystery that shocked the world: the case of the lead masks. Until then, keep questioning, keep investigating, and never stop seeking the truth.